What's up guys, Frugal BC, and I've got a very unusual video today. You know, I don't do a ton of reaction videos on this channel and very rarely do a debunking video. I think the last debunking video I did was on that one on NFTs, that documentary that was just full of nonsense. I had to address that. And it's kind of the same situation here. So Invest Answers, which is a fairly big YouTube channel that I just had never heard of before a couple days ago, apparently made this video about Algorand and how it's basically a dead chain and its only hope is to push for a CBDC. And so this was making the way around the Algorand spaces, and I had to take a look. Now, you guys know I cover Algorand a lot. You guys also know that I'm not afraid to be critical of Algorand and have in the past. Like, for example, I think their marketing has sucked. I think it's been really bad, and I think the attitude by some of the leaders has been bad. You know, I called out Sean Ford when he said, oh, we just think the tech will sell itself. Well, guess what? Not, especially in crypto, it doesn't work that way. I don't think it works that way in any way, because no one knows about you. They're not going to use you. It doesn't matter how good your product is. But especially in crypto, like, you really do have to shout it from the rooftops. It's just the way it is. Now, I do think Algorand has some of the best tech. I've also said that it has poor price action, and this isn't like the buy and hold coin that you're going to get rich because it's going to go off 100x, you know? This is the coin that I actually use, and I use a lot of stuff. So it's kind of funny to hear it be called a dead chain. While I think there are criticisms of Algorand that are legit, I think a lot of the ones that I found here were not. Now, I will say, before I get into it, that the CBDC part, I agreed with a lot of what he said, and I was almost starting to think, well, gosh, maybe I'm making a video like, actually, this dude is right. Then he got to the Algorand as a dead chain section, and that's just, it's so bad. It's so bad. This is a guy who spends 5 minutes in the beginning of his video saying, oh, I tell you the truth, and I only care about the data, and data never lies. Well, guess what? People can lie with data. We've seen that numerous times. I don't know how many times I've seen scientific studies where the authors don't even cite their own data correctly, and they'll get called out by other scientists. So it's totally possible to use data to lie, which this guy tries to pretend is impossible, which he does repeatedly. He makes a number of fallacies. Lay those out in a Twitter thread, and I didn't get into any of the specifics because I'm saving them for this video. So I'll talk about the CBDC stuff that he says. I think there's some legitimacy there. I'm scared of heck of the CBDCs. I think it's a horrible thing. It is Orwellian, good use of that word. So I give him credit there, but yeah, the Algorand as a dead chain thing is just crazy. Could it be better? Yes. So there's always what I would say is there's a kernel of truth to what he says, but he just makes a lot of analytical errors. So let's get into that. Before we do, guys, if you don't mind hitting that like button, and I'd love it if you subscribe to the channel. As I always say, you don't have to smash it. You can just press it gently. Still works. Guess what? Now, I will say that at the risk of sounding just like this guy, because this is something I always say, I'm someone that I just bring you the straight up truth about crypto. I don't sugarcoat things. I don't hype, but I also, I also can't just stand nonsense. I try to be intellectually honest with these videos, and the reason I'm mad about this, I'm not mad, I just think it's crazy, this video is crazy, is because I don't think it's intellectually honest. By the way, I do want to shout out my sponsors, non-fungible domains. If you want to get those .algo addresses that just make life a lot easier instead of typing in all those letters and numbers, check out non-fungible domains in the description below. Love what these guys do, and I'm always very careful who I partner with, and these guys are legit. They're doing the right thing. And we're brought to you by Fractal Monsters, which is a play-to-earn game on the Algorand blockchain. And the reason I'm partnering with these guys is because they're doing things right. They're following the roadmap. They're being transparent, and they keep communicating, and I appreciate that. Because as I've always said, communication is key in crypto. You got to keep communicating. These guys are doing it right. So go check both of those out in the description below, and let's get to the video today. Okay, so one of the first things that Invest Answers gets into is he talks about the CBDC and Algorand connection. Now, it appears Algorand had a web page that was devoted to CBDCs that he says they took down. So I don't know what's going on here. There is the page. The URL does lead to the Algorand's website. In the URL is government services. So it goes to a dead page. And it was weird because I looked it up on Wayback Machine, and November 22nd appears to be the only instance of this web page existing. So I don't really know what's going on there. He says that it was up, and he did have a screenshot of it that's talking about CBDCs. It's supposed to be under, what services can we provide you? And so he brings this point up, and I don't know what to make of it because I would expect to be able to find it at the Wayback Machine and I couldn't. It's possible they requested that they take it down. People can do that. So I'm gonna leave that as undefined because I don't know what is going on there exactly. But he does provide proof, and Algorand has talked about this a lot. They've had a report in 2022 that came out talking about their philosophy on CBDCs. Essentially said that they saw it as a hybrid model where it wouldn't be the chain itself, but not a side chain, but another instance of the chain privately being used, which I thought was sort of interesting. He doesn't really mention that, but it does pop up a lot. There was a Yahoo article, and that Yahoo article also was taken down. So I do find that a little concerning. I'm not sure 100% what is going on there, but it is a little concerning. And CBDCs in general, like, I think he's totally correct. We should be really concerned about the government having so much control over your finances. You know, he talks about like this idea of carbon credits where they can track how much you're spending on travel and limit your travel. You know, if like at 10%, there's all these scenarios. And frankly, if like 5% come true, yeah, I'm against that. I don't like the idea of centralization. That's the whole reason we're in crypto. I've long said that it's a spectrum. Okay, so I don't think like 100% decentralized is necessarily the best thing. I think that balance is going to be somewhere in between, but this is like on the far end of centralized and I don't like it. As I went through this video, I thought, hey, maybe I'm actually going to agree with this guy. It's entirely possible because I do have my criticisms of Algorand, and I think there's like he could have made a very legit arguments against Algorand if he had followed his own data a little more closely. We'll see what I'm talking about in the next segment. Okay, so here's the part we get into where he starts talking about Algorand being a dead chain, which I think is just, it's a crazy thing to say. You know, could it be doing better than it is? Yeah, that I agree, that I would agree with. And I think some of his data supports that premise that, yeah, there probably could be better things going on. Also, as I've said all along, Algorand's not the best price mover. You know, if you're just looking for gains and not to actually use the chain, yeah, you probably go with something like Solana. I've already made like a bunch of money on Solana. Would I ever use Solana for anything? Oh, heck no. Heck no. And I'm being polite to for the YouTube algorithms. I mean, down 9 times in 2022, and I think it just went down again. Yeah, hard pass. Thank you. But let's get into what he says, because I think some of this stuff is just kind of crazy. Okay, so the first thing he says is he talks about low fees and DEX volume. DEX volume, he says, is about 1 million per day. But then he talks about the fees. So Algorand only brings in about $131 in daily fees. The particular instance that he checked was about that much, and it's probably around that much every day. Now that is a fair criticism, but here's where he goes wrong. He compares it to ETH's fees, which are 73,000 times the fees of Algorand. Here's where that's a legit criticism, and it's not. Where it's a legit criticism is that's a small amount of fees to support the organization. The way he describes it as this is a difference in usage. Well, the reason ETH is so much higher is because the gas fees are so much higher. That's not hard to understand, is it? I mean, Algorand fees are like 0.001 Algorand, maybe 0.002 Algorand. That is way less than a penny. That is a tiny fraction of a penny compared to Ethereum, where they can be several dollars. In fact, let's see what the current ETH fees are. So right now, they're actually not bad. They're about $1.77, but I don't know if you guys remember during the bull market last year, a couple years ago, gas fees would be like almost $70, $80, because you usually have 2 transactions. They'd be like $70, $80 just to do one simple thing. And they take forever. Ethereum is extraordinarily slow and it's being used a lot, fair enough. So compared to Algorand, the fees are very, very low. Now from a user perspective, that is a feature, not a bug, obviously, because I can actually do things on Algorand. Like I'm daily like taking profits in my Tiny Man account and reinvesting them. It just wouldn't be feasible except at extraordinarily high dollar amounts, because you would just pay too much in gas fees. Plus it would take like 4 hours. I've had stuff. I remember when I bought a NFT on Gala and you had to use Ethereum. I bought the thing, went to jiu-jitsu, came back, ate supper. It was like 4 or 5 hours later, it finally went through. This happens in like 3 seconds on Algorand. So now there is a fair comparison to be made there, however, because that's bad for the organization. If they're only making $131 in fees, then they're not making very much to support the network, right? And so that is a problem. Other people have pointed that out. So it's fair. It's just not the argument he makes. So the comparison that would make sense is if you had actual numbers of transactions. Okay, so now we're looking at Algorand daily transactions. So let's just see what we got here. Let's see. We're tending to be, this is the last month, tending to be around that 100,000 range. And we're, peaking every once in a while a little higher than that, but that's probably a fair amount. How about Ethereum daily transaction? This is from Statista, and this is in 1,000. So that's like this middle number is 1 million. So it's around 1 million, sometimes a little higher, around 1 million. So about a factor of 10, right? About a factor of 10. So Ethereum, despite having a giant market cap, despite being supposedly superior in so many metrics, it's only about 10 times higher, over 100,000 transactions per day. Somehow that's supposed to be a dead chain. I just find that really disingenuous. Okay, the next point that I want to address here is he talks about active developers. And what he does here is something of a category error. So he uses two different metrics that are unrelated and pretends that one is a lie, the other one is the truth. It's really a bizarre way to present the data, but what he says is that Algorand claims to have 35,000 registered developers. Now that's throughout the entire history, right? So that's all people who have registered to be a developer on Algorand, right? Which is probably true, but it's also a lot, and it's not a really true reflection of how many developers are actively developing on Algorand. And then he points out a metric about weekly active developers, which is a totally different metric. And comparing the two is just sort of silly because I think all chains would look like that. What is a good comparison, and this is another example where he could have made his case honestly and still had a pretty decent case, is the fact that actually Algorand is kind of low by this metric, but not as low as he tries to make it sound, which is in the metrics that he's showing you. Those metrics are there. All he had to do is read them. Let's take a look at this. Yeah, so I'm going to pull this up for you guys. This is weekly combined developers. He doesn't explain, and I don't know what metric. He says it's his own engine apparently. Like I don't see where he's actually getting this metric from. So I don't know exactly what weekly combined developers means. Although I will tell you that oftentimes this metric it's kind of difficult to actually quantify. This is something I've heard from people who operate these chains. And I can't remember if it was ChainTrail or it was DeFi Llama. One of them actually, I was talking to someone involved with it. I think it was ChainTrail, and they were talking about how difficult it is to track this metric. You can also look at weekly commits and stuff like that. But okay, so Algorand, he points out 32 weekly combined developers. Again, we don't know exactly what that metric means, but even if it's a flawed metric, it's flawed equally for all the chains. So we'll take that as a given, as a constant. And yeah, way behind Ethereum, of course, about 300 behind Bitcoin. But then if you look at ones like Near Protocol, it's about a third. And yeah, you want that to be a little higher for sure. Arbitrum, which is also a top 100 chain, as I recall, that is 31. Phantom, only 17. Sui is 55. Optimism 72, Aptos 61, Polygon, which is a huge layer 2 at 140. So it's low, and that's a fair case to make, right? That is absolutely a fair case to make. However, it's not like so out of line. It's not like these are 5 where everyone else is 400, right? So, I mean, he could have used this to make a case that, hey, Algorand weekly combined developers, a little on the low side. I mean, that would be a fair argument to make. But also acknowledging that it's not necessarily out of range. It's not the lowest one on this list. And it's a little silly to use the 35,000. You're using a completely different metric. Again, we don't know what weekly combined developers actually means, nor does he explain it in his video. He's the one that gathered this data. Commits, also kind of low. I definitely admit that the weekly commits are low. But the 1 month growth, it has one of the better 1 month growth on the weekly commits than any chain on here. It actually has the, was it second highest? Yeah, I see Arbitrum has the first highest growth percentage within a month, and Algorand is second. In 3 months, then, the metrics don't look good. So it kind of depends on the metrics that you use. Even total sub ecosystems, Algorand's on the low side, but not the lowest on there. Repositories are low, so for sure low on that, but not the lowest again, which, I don't think anybody would call I don't think anybody reasonable would call any of the chains on here dead chains. And that's what he's trying to say, by the way. Could it be doing better? Absolutely. And I've said this all along for all of these. Absolutely, Algorand could be doing better. I've made those criticisms before, but to pretend like it's a dead chain. And so the reason I question that 32 weekly combined developers is like, these things are really hard to track. I can tell you there's more than 32 projects on Algorand that are operating and functional right now. We cover a lot of them on this channel. So you have to keep these metrics in mind with a grain of salt, but it is fair, since I think these, even if the metrics are flawed, we can use it by comparison. That is absolutely legit, because it's going to be presumably equally flawed for all, possibly. I mean, there's possibilities it's not in that sense at all. This is why when this guy tells you, oh, it's just the data. Well, data can lie, data can be manipulated. You can misread data or just refuse to read it, as he did on this one. He could have made a reasonably good case to say, hey, Algorand kind of behind on this a little bit, could definitely stand to increase in some of these metrics. I think that would have been a fair argument. But he's trying to make the argument that Algorand is not just a struggling chain, which I think it has been. I think a lot of people think that. But he's trying to make the argument that it's a dead chain, and I think that's just ridiculous. So this other argument that he makes is that he points out the high number of Algorand addresses, but then points out that there's a bunch of addresses with a zero account balance. And this somehow means, oh, Algorand's just a dead chain. Well, yeah, there's a lot of zero balance. I own one myself, and do you know why I own it? Because during my algo hacks, everyone rekeyed their wallets, including me, to keep our account safe. So I have a wallet address that is purely for the point of keeping my other address safe, because it's rekeyed, which means it can't be hacked. Why don't we look at a metric that, again, this is not comparing it to other chains. You have to compare it to something else. The answer you should always ask when you put a metric out there is like, compared to what? So let's compare it to other chains. He likes Messari. Messari is one of the sources that he cites. Let's see what happens when we go to Messari. So Messari happens to have a list of cryptocurrencies. We got Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Cardano, Dogecoin, Chainlink, all these ones we know, right? And we have a column called active addresses. Well, that should be able to give us a comparison. And conveniently, and I love when data analytics places allow you to do this, I can click on active addresses. I can click on active addresses and rank them by active addresses. Well, now we can scroll down and see just how many does Algorand have. Is it first? No. Second? No. Third? No. Oh gosh, we're gonna have to go so far down to, sixth place with 91,000 active addresses. 91,000. That is above Dogecoin. That's above Bitcoin Cash, Cardano, Dash, Decred. I don't even know what the Decred is. See what else? US dollar coin, XRP, blowing out XRP, blowing out Wrapped ETH, blowing out Ethereum Classic, Digibyte, Zcash. This is probably the worst one of Invest Answers things here. Like his arguments, it's so bad. Because he's trying to claim that, there's just a bunch of dead addresses. There's no active addresses on Algorand. Dude, it's right in the data. You use Messari. I know you saw, if you did the deep research that you said you did, I know you saw this. I know you saw this, dude. Come on. It's sixth place out of all these inactive addresses. This is your dead chain? Are you kidding me? Seriously, dude? Come on. Again, there are things to critique on Algorand, and I have made most of those critiques, but to call it a dead chain in the face of it being like in sixth place on Messari for active addresses, beating coins that are way higher in market cap than Algorand is, it's just ridiculous. Not to mention, I'm going to show you a clip of him praising Sam Bankman-Fried and telling you should listen to Sam Bankman-Fried. Let's check that out.
Always listen to the smart people, follow the smart money. Ignore everybody else. This guy is one of the smart people. Sam Bankman-Fried.
So this is the guy. This is the guy who's telling you Algorand is a dead chain when the data does not show that. This is the guy who spent 5 minutes saying that he cares about data and then just making cardinal sin of data analytics after cardinal sin. It's just ridiculous. It is what it is. I'm sure like all his followers are programmed to believe whatever he says, and all he has to do is say, look, data, and no one actually questions it, whether he's actually interpreting the data correctly or, you know, cherry picking, which he does a ton, which I've just demonstrated. That's just 3 of his claims. I mean, I didn't get through the whole video. Those are just 3 of the claims, and that's how poorly he botched them. Sorry, if this is your hero, I don't know what to tell you. Jeez. All right, guys, that's enough for me. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm sure the people who like Algorand probably like this video. I'm sure his fanboys will be angry in the comments, and, you know, feel free, but come with data. If you don't come with data, you know, stay home. And that's all I got to say. I'm Frugal BC. Stay safe out there. And as always, I'll see you in the future.